Hello, everybody, and good morning. My name's Don Arleth, and it's time for World News coming straight to you from Warsaw. Ukraine is short around 750 million euro of the 2 billion it needs for gas purchases, according to Ukraine's president, during a meeting with journalists on Monday evening. Now, Zelenskyy also noted that the EU will provide an additional 127 million euro to support Ukraine's energy needs.
At this point, we understand that we are short of about 750 million out of the 2 billion we discussed in relation to gas. Just now, President Ursula said that we will receive an additional 127 million euros in support. We are grateful for this. After that, our Minister of Energy took part in the meeting of the G7 energy ministers, and we received support everywhere, from Canada, Italy, Germany, and other countries as well.
2 Russian citizens whom Poland accepted as political refugees turned out to be working with Russian intelligence services. Files from the year-long investigation revealed that Igor and Irina collected information about employees of the Polish Ministry of Foreign Affairs, as well as the government's academic exchange programs. 2 Russian citizens accused of spying for Moscow were caught by the Polish Internal Security Agency. According to the case file, an encrypted flash drive sent by Igor R. and his wife Irina R. contained data on people supporting Russian oppositionists in Poland. Igor was also supposed to describe officials from the Polish Ministry of Foreign Affairs, people involved in Poland's academic exchange program, as well as teachers from the University of Silesia, where he studied computer science and received a roughly 1,200 euro scholarship per month. During the investigation, the Russian collaborator admitted that he attempted to pass information to Russian intelligence, but the package was never picked up. The court proceedings against the Russian citizens will start on December 8th, and if proven guilty of espionage, the pair will face a sentence ranging from 8 years to life in prison. Ukraine has shown remarkable commitment in its bid for EU membership. That's what the European Commission is expected to say in its draft enlargement report. However, not all areas of reform are complete, and a long road still lies ahead for Kyiv to join the European family. While acknowledging progress on reforms, the European Commission will warn that Ukraine needs to strengthen judicial independence, curb organized crime, and increase protections for civil society. The Commission is set to rule that Ukraine has met the conditions to open 3 out of 6 EU accession clusters required for a state to be deemed ready to join the bloc. At the same time, the Commission expects Kyiv to meet the remaining conditions to open the rest of the clusters by the end of the year. However, despite the upcoming report's positive outlook, no clusters are expected to be open soon, as Hungary remains the only blocker to Ukraine's bid to join the European Union. The UK has supplied Ukraine with another batch of Storm Shadow cruise missiles, significantly boosting Kyiv's long-range strike capability ahead of winter. At the same time, Washington still remains reluctant on providing U.S.-made Tomahawk missiles.
Unnamed sources told Bloomberg that the latest delivery replenishes Ukraine's stockpiles as Russia prepares renewed winter assaults. The UK-made Storm Shadow missiles, capable of striking targets up to 560 kilometers away, have already been used to hit Russian sites in Bryansk, Kursk, and occupied Crimea. Their precision and low-altitude flight make them difficult to intercept. The US, meanwhile, continues to withhold its longer-range Tomahawk missiles, despite President Volodymyr Zelensky's recent appeals in Washington. President Trump said there are, quote, no immediate plans to transfer them, though he left open the possibility of a future change.
Russia may be throwing everything it has at Pokrovsk, but even if Moscow declares victory, what exactly would it be winning? Former commander of U.S. Army Europe, General Ben Hodges, says that capturing a heap of rubble is no triumph and far from a turning point against Ukraine.
You described the city as a pile of rubble, and yet the fight continues between Ukraine and Russia over that city. So if Russia claims definite victory, what will be the significance for Ukraine? Could this fall of this city mean the beginning of an end for Ukraine in this conflict?
Absolutely not. No. Look, Russia is using everything they have after more than a year just to finally capture Pokrovsk. And then I would ask the question, okay, once they capture Pokrovsk, then what? I mean, what will they do if they capture Pokrovsk? They don't have the capability to exploit whatever success they might have here. So the Ukrainians, if the Ukrainians decide to pull back from what they have now, they'll fall back to another defense line. And there will be nothing left for Russia to do except occupy what is a pile of rubble, anti-tank ditches and barbed wire, and a lot of unexploded ordnance. So it will take them a long time to even resume offensive operations if they do capture Pokrovsk. So I think this is anything but good news for Russia.
Online transactions will be harder for Russian citizens after the EU's 19th sanctions package kicks in. Russian customers of digital bank Revolut have already been informed that their accounts will be closed by the end of the year if they don't hold EU residency. According to the report, Russian users of Revolut without valid EU residence permits received messages over the weekend informing them that their accounts would be closed by December 31st of this year. Access to online payments, card transactions, deposits, and withdrawals was immediately suspended. Customers who quickly submitted valid EU residence documents reportedly regained access within hours. Revolut confirmed that the move complies with the new EU sanctions banning payment services for Russian and Belarusian citizens without EU residency or citizenship. The digital bank, once among the few open to Russian clients fleeing the country, said it must adhere to international sanctions regulations across all jurisdictions where it operates. China and Russia conducting covert nuclear tests. That's what U.S. President Donald Trump claims, along with the chief of the CIA. This comes after Russia tested its Poseidon nuclear-powered super torpedo that analysts claim could cause a radioactive wave and prove to be devastating to coastal communities. Could the U.S. also resume such tests?
Donald Trump was right, John Ratcliffe wrote on social media, attaching a 2019 statement by the former head of the Defense Intelligence Agency and a 2020 article from the Wall Street Journal. General Robert Ashley from the DIA said that the US does not believe Russia is complying with the moratorium on nuclear testing. The article mentions China conducting secret nuclear tests. Meanwhile, Tom Cotton wrote that the CIA assessed that both Russia and China have conducted supercritical nuclear weapons tests. The statements were made in response to Donald Trump's claims that Russia, China, and Pakistan are conducting underground nuclear tests, and his announcement that the United States will also resume such tests.
Despite Washington wanting to disrupt the so-called limitless alliance between Moscow and Beijing, Russian Prime Minister Mikhail Mishustin traveled to Beijing to meet with Chinese President Xi Jinping. Further areas of cooperation are on the agenda. Chinese President Xi Jinping is hosting the Russian Prime Minister Mikhail Mishustin in Beijing. The meeting comes as Moscow grapples with Western sanctions over its continued war in Ukraine. Beijing, a staunch supporter of the Kremlin, faces its own challenges, especially trade tensions with Washington. The two officials held a meeting where they reportedly discussed mutual investment and further cooperation between the two countries concerning areas such as AI, digital economy, energy, and agriculture sectors. Mishustin met with the Chinese premier on Monday for talks centered on defending shared security interests. Latvia's political storm over the Istanbul Convention, which is crucial in protecting women from violence, is shaking more than just public opinion. It's rattling the government to its core. The Latvian Prime Minister says that the so-called denunciation law wasn't about values at all, but a calculated move to stir outrage and topple her coalition ahead of next year's general election.
To some extent, this also affects the overall climate within the coalition. I think responsibility really lies with those who started all of this. They calculated very well when to initiate it, during the budget process, to agitate society to topple the government. Some of the deputies who voted for this denunciation law have even admitted that this was the main reason.
Following the one-year anniversary of the Novi Sad tragedy and the protests that followed in Serbia's capital, Belgrade, Sunday was defined by unrest, with 37 people arrested. And while that is taking place, President Alexander Vučić is playing for time, promising early elections to ease tensions, but without providing a date when the said elections should take place. Our Balkans correspondent Pavel Czaskovsky has this report.
Don't be misguided by the music in the background. The atmosphere in front of the parliament in Belgrade is far from cheerful today. The music comes from the camp of the supporters of the ruling SNS party and the country's president Alexander Vučić. After each song ends, the booing comes from the other side. These are the anti-government protesters who have gathered here for a second consecutive night. Tonight, a smaller crowd. However, since the movement was created, the number of protesters has only been growing.
There is many research, many surveys which are showing that 1/3 or 1/2 of Serbian population joined some kind of protest during last year. So from that perspective, for sure, somehow it's dangerous for him. But like I mentioned before, behind his regime, as I might say, it's a lot of state resources, media control, and also some kind of, let's say, corruption.
This corruption is what the protesters are opposing, and one of their demands is snap elections. President Vučić indeed said yesterday that he is going to call for snap elections. However, again, he failed to provide a specific date as to when that would happen. Therefore, he failed again to appease the protest movement. From Belgrade, Serbia, for TVP World, I'm Pavel Trzaskowski.
Bosnian leaders should move to join the EU while the window of opportunity is open, according to the EU's top diplomat, Kaja Kallas. Kallas also visited Sarajevo after the UN Security Council voted to prolong the European peace mission in the country on Friday. This November marks 30 years since the Dayton Peace Agreement, which ended Bosnia's 3.5-year-long inter-ethnic war.
30 years after the Dayton Peace Agreement, the European Union will keep doing everything we can to prevent any security vacuum in the country. We will not let history repeat. The international powers can be faded out when the local authorities are ready to make decisions. And that's why we really tried to convince the authorities in Bosnia and Herzegovina that it is their country, they need to adopt decisions, and then also there is no need for the international intervention. Windows of enlargement of the European Union are very rarely open, but one is open now. Your political leaders have to grab this opportunity, or the window of opportunity will close again.
At least one person was killed after a medieval tower partially collapsed in the Italian capital on Monday, as stated by the head of Rome's fire department. After a long and complicated operation, they managed to pull one worker from under the rubble. He was part of the crew that was renovating the Torre dei Conti, converting it into a museum and conference center.
The worker we recovered was conscious, breathing. Then he was taken in an ambulance for stabilization, which left for the hospital. We don't know exactly what his condition is. We had 12 hours of continuous work. Our intervention was with 140 men of various specialities. Obviously, it was a very complex operation. In the first intervention attempt, we were almost able to get him out. Unfortunately, a second collapse brought a lot of rubble on top of the worker. The attic of the building came down completely, and so there was an accumulation of additional materials on top of his body.
And that concludes this edition of World News. Thanks for watching, and stay with us for more here on TVP World.